The Aussie economy has one final surge, expanding at a 6% pace before higher interest rates start to kick in. Andrew Forrest spends $4 billion on renewable energy, becoming a kingmaker in the process, and we'll tell you what the most Googled questions were in 2022. It's Thursday, the 8th of December, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Okay, Michael. Oh, good morning, firstly. What do you think's the most Googled term in 2022? I'm not going to tell you. I want you to guess before we go.
I'm going to guess it's something still about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be something about how do I know if I've got COVID or something like that. And I knew you were going to test me on this, and I have not looked it up.
Okay, good. Let's find out.
All right,
later in the show.
Good stuff. You have an interview coming up today with one of our kind of, once again, semi-regulars. He's a bit of a favourite of ours here, Gareth Aird, Head of Australian Economics at Commonwealth Bank, a massive kind of 48 hours.
Yeah, after yesterday's national accounts, which showed economic growth for the September quarter and the Reserve Bank's decision to lift interest rates, no one better to talk to than Gareth, and he takes us through what yesterday's numbers mean, what he thinks is going to happen to interest rates, also what he thinks is going to happen to house prices.
Yeah, he's got a really interesting perspective, and he has such a gift for explaining it all in plain English. That is really the main story today, because the Australian economy grew at a near 6% pace for the year ending September 30, showing just how well it bounced back from the COVID recession despite all those headwinds from other parts of the world.
Yes, it was a good set of numbers from the Bureau of Statistics yesterday, with the economy expanding by 0.6% in the September quarter to be 5.9% larger than a year earlier. Now, the main reason the annual number is so much larger is because it includes the December 2021 quarter. Now, that was the end of lockdowns. The economy just took off. The next set of numbers won't include that. The September expansion is right in line with Reserve Bank forecasts, and Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers called it a strong result. Clearly, the economy isn't travelling as quick as it was in those post-COVID months, and economists don't really expect it to accelerate anytime soon, given the recent run of interest rate rises.
Sean, please forgive me for using a kind of a bit of business jargon here, but I think we need to get a bit granular with the details of the national accounts. What does it all say about the economy?
Well, a few interesting bits and pieces in it, and plenty of interesting bits and pieces, but the ones I'm going to pick out. The national wages bill rose more than 3% during the quarter, the fastest pace in more than 15 years. That's thanks to a very low unemployment rate and a big jump in the minimum wage during the quarter. The accounts show that after building up plenty of savings during the coronavirus pandemic, households are now putting much less away. Bit of an irony there. People are getting paid more but saving less. Seems to be the way to go. And that's because they're spending, of course. In fact, household spending rose 1.1% for the quarter, pretty much accounting for all of the growth. Net trade detracted from growth. There was a bigger jump in imports than in exports. Weaker demand for commodities also hurt growth, while the construction sector added to the economy.
All right. So what does it all mean, especially, I suppose, for interest rates?
Given the numbers came in more or less around what was expected, probably not a lot. Actually, the number was a bit shy of consensus among market economists, so at the margin that argues against interest rate hikes, but only at the margin. These figures, of course, are backward-looking, and the higher interest rates that started in May wouldn't have hit too many people too hard during the September quarter. So it's likely quarterly growth figures from here on in will be affected by higher interest rates, which means the economy is likely to have slowed during the current quarter and into 2023.
Okay. How about local markets? Did these numbers have any impact there?
Well, once again, it was a bit swamped by what was happening overseas. Now, the S&P ASX 200 closed down nearly 1% to 7,229 points. The market really was worried about what happened on Wall Street yesterday morning, where the tech-heavy Nasdaq fell 2% and the broad-based S&P 500 dropped 1.4%. Why? Because there's growing fears of a recession in the world's biggest economy. While the big miners locally did okay yesterday on higher iron ore prices, pretty much all other sectors went backwards, with technology stocks again falling the most. The tech sub-index lost 3.3%, with leader WiseTech Global off 5% and online property group REA down 2.6%. It was a bit like the day before, but just more exaggerated. Fortescue was the best of the large caps, up more than 2%. The banks were all lower, led by ANZ, which dropped 1.4%. Woodside Energy was down 2%. Industrial property giant Goodman Group fell nearly 3%. Beach Energy share price fell 10%, a one-month low and easily the worst of the top 200, on fears of what the collapse in engineering contractor Clough would do to its major gas project in Western Australia. We talked about Clough's collapse yesterday morning. That will filter through to many companies, and Beach Energy really felt it yesterday. Also in corporate news, oil and gas major Santos said it will increase its on-market share buyback by about $350 million US. Mind you, that didn't stop its share price from dropping more than 1% yesterday.
Sean, you mentioned Wall Street before. What happened elsewhere on global markets?
Well, let's go to oil, because oil prices tumbled yesterday to their lowest this year. Brent crude fell below $80 a barrel on fears of a recession in the US and a global slowdown. I say fell, but prices remain higher than any point over the past 8 years, with a couple of notable exceptions, and that's why petrol prices are so high. But at least this latest news will put downward pressure at the bowser. There's also an interesting note out from investment bank Goldman Sachs, saying copper prices are set to hit record levels in the next 12 months as a supply shortage coincides with increased demand. Now, copper is a litmus test for commodities and the economy in general because it's used in so many products, from batteries to buildings. It's off more than 20% from its record highs in March, though last month it jumped 11%. Will be very interesting to watch that one.
Yeah, sure will. Okay, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the United States will ramp up its military presence in Australia, saying it won't leave its Pacific Ocean partner with a capability gap while China is exerting its influence.
That's right. Defence Minister Richard Marles and Foreign Minister Penny Wong joined the US Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin and the Secretary of State Antony Blinken for the annual AUSMIN meetings yesterday. Now, the US praised Australia's stance against China. An official communique noted that there would be enhanced air cooperation through the rotational deployment of all US aircraft types in Australia and appropriate aircraft training and exercises. Now, Washington has already been planning to build dedicated facilities for 6 B-52 aircraft at the Tyndall Air Base south of Darwin. We already knew that. But what we found out yesterday is that there'll be enhanced maritime cooperation. However, there was no firm agreement on allowing US nuclear-powered sub crews to be based in Australia. That is a very touchy point.
I mentioned this one at the top of the show, Sean. Andrew Forrest's Squadron Energy, which is part of the billionaire's family office, has bought CWP Renewables for an estimated $4 billion, ramping up competition in the renewables space.
Yes, so the deal was due for completion yesterday, and Andrew Forrest last night came out and confirmed that he had paid more than $4 billion. It means Squadron will take control of wind farms with about 1.1 gigawatts of generation capacity and a large portfolio of potential developments. It also has solar power assets, and once everything is up and running, it should be able to power 8.5 million homes. Incredible. Forrest is certainly a profit for the renewables, Michael, with Fortescue Future Industries developing green hydrogen at mass scale. He's become one of the country's largest owners of renewables by paying that $4 billion, and that pretty much gives him a seat, maybe two seats, at the table discussing the transition from fossil fuels to renewables. Michael, Andrew Forrest will be more powerful than ever.
Seems that way. Now, Sean, we talk a lot about Crown Resorts and about Star Entertainment, but Austrac is suing the third casino player in Australia, New Zealand-based Sky City, for allegedly allowing patrons to wash dirty cash through its Adelaide gaming rooms.
Certainly sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It does. It feels like there might be a theme here.
The Financial Crimes Watchdog filed its case in the federal court yesterday. It alleges Sky City facilitated money laundering that amounted to serious and systemic breaches of the law. Investigations commenced in June last year, and Austrac Deputy Chief Executive Peter Soros said the regulator found failures in Sky City's approach to anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing obligations. Now, Sky City hasn't yet filed its defence. We must bring that to your attention. Star Entertainment and Crown Resorts, of course, are also facing federal court cases brought by Austrac.
Sean, there has been a great takeover battle going on for ASX-listed Warrego Energy involving Gina Rinehart's Hancock Prospecting, Kerry Stokes' Beach Energy, and another listed group, Strike Energy.
Yes, so Warrego is an oil and gas company with assets in Australia and Spain. Hancock Prospecting and Beach Energy have been in a ding-dong battle, and a couple of days ago it looked like Hancock had won, or at least was winning, after bidding $342 million for the company, for Warrego. Now, the Warrego board gave Beach until Monday to better it. Yesterday, it emerged that Strike Energy, a third player, holds 19.9% of Warrego. Now, Strike Energy was a one-time suitor of Warrego but was rebuffed. It's also a partner in a gas project in Western Australia. So you have Reinhardt v Stokes for Warrego and another player, Strike, holding a big chunk of the shares. Definitely worth keeping an eye on this one. We love battles between billionaires.
We certainly do, and we especially love them when you describe them as a ding-dong battle. God, I love that saying.
I thought about that, how to describe it. Ding-dong is just, I think it's a phrase that really we need to reintroduce into the vernacular.
And so maybe that's Fear and Greed's new campaign, just to bring ding-dong back.
Yeah, bring ding-dong back.
There we go. I can see that actually trending as a hashtag now. Bring back ding dong, maybe. All right. Now, Queensland provided its mid-year budget update yesterday and expects to deliver a $5.2 billion surplus this financial year, thanks to high coal prices.
No wonder Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk is worried about caps on energy prices. Inflation is high. The state economy will slow, but who cares when taxes are up $7.2 billion thanks to an extra $5.2 billion in coal royalties. That's underpinned a $6 billion turnaround in the state's bottom line in the past 6 months. Pretty incredible. There are also reports around this morning that the federal government has spoken to the New South Wales government about capping coal prices. We'll see how that one goes.
All right, finally, Sean, it's time to put me out of my misery. Google released its annual year in search report yesterday. What was it? What was the most searched word or phrase? Was it about COVID?
Wordle.
Wordle?
W-O-R-D-L-E.
I suppose I would have been one of those ones who Googled it this year because this was the year that I started to play Wordle.
Wordle, yeah. So those who don't know, Wordle is a word game which gives you 5 guesses to guess a word, and it just took off. And New York Times now owns it, I believe.
Yep.
But it's very difficult to stop doing once you've started it. So Wordle was number 1. Then came Australian Open, World Cup, Shane Warne, who died in March, tragically. The top 10 also included Ukraine, Ashes, Olivia Newton-John, Ash Barty, Novak Djokovic, and Betty White.
Really?
Do you know who Betty White is, Michael?
Yes, the entire planet knows who Betty White is.
Oh, I had to Google it. I'm serious.
No, you didn't. So
I did.
But like Golden Girls,
yeah,
one of the most extraordinary kind of Hollywood and television careers, and you had to Google it.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, sorry. I'm offended on behalf of Betty White fans everywhere.
Right. They also released, or Google also released, the top why is searches. Number 4, why is lettuce so expensive?
Yes.
Fair enough. Now, number 1 was why is Russia invading Ukraine? I'm sort of comforted by that. That's like a fair one.
That actually says something positive about us, the fact that we are a curious bunch, and it is actually for good reason.
Yeah, and at number 2 is probably on the same lines, though a little specific. Why is yogurt good for females?
That is very specific.
And then number 3, why is petrol so expensive?
Oh, I've Googled that, but if you substitute diesel for petrol.
Yeah. Now, the other one, Australians searched when will the rain stop more than any other country. Fascinating.
And you can sense the desperation coming through in that Google search, isn't it?
It's funny. I mean, it's that time of year because Spotify, I think it was last week, came out with its annual lists as well. Top artist, have a guess.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, Taylor Swift, then Drake, then Ed Sheeran. The Kid Laroi was a top local artist, followed by, Michael, this is in your bailiwick.
Oh,
your household.
The Wiggles.
Yeah, yes. The Wiggles were the second top local artist. The top podcast, on Spotify at least.
Fear and Greed?
Almost. The Joe Rogan Experience. There you go.
Okay, that probably makes sense. We will accept that. All right, moving on to overseas news now, Sean. Wall Street's big investment banks are feeling the pinch with warnings of layoffs and much smaller bonuses.
Yes, a little pause for the investment bankers out there. Morgan Stanley will reduce its workforce by about 2%. That's 1,600 people, according to Bloomberg. Earlier in the week, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon said smaller bonuses and even potential layoffs should come as no surprise amid a deal slump. And Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan said the lender is slowing hiring as fewer employees are leaving in an attempt to manage headcount. Oh, it's tough being an investment banker in 2022.
It sure is. Solar power, Sean, is set to overtake coal as the world's largest power source by 2027. That's pretty remarkable. This is according to the latest report from the International Energy Agency.
I was quite excited by this. I think it's great.
That's only 5 years away.
I know. The International Energy Agency said the war in Ukraine had accelerated the shift to cheaper clean energy sources such as wind and solar. That is, there's very little good out of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but the fact that the world has looked for renewable alternatives rather than oil and gas from that region is a good thing. The report says that in Australia, high demand for corporate power purchase agreements will boost renewable capacity by 85%. Over the next 5 years. Globally, over the next 5 years, renewable energy capacity is likely to double, which, of course, will go a long way in helping limit global warming.
It feels like this is major progress. Finally, Sean, Donald Trump's bid to become president of the United States again in 2024 took a double hit yesterday.
Yes, nothing fatal, but certainly wounds. The former president's businesses were found guilty of running a 13-year tax fraud scheme by a New York jury. Entities in the Trump Organization, that's the name of the defender, the Trump Organization were charged with illegally reducing the tax it paid on executive pay by awarding top managers off-the-books perks. So his companies are now convicted of crimes. That's the first one. The second blow was in a US Senate runoff vote where the Trump-supported Republican candidate in the state of Georgia lost to the Democratic incumbent. Doesn't sound like much, but Georgia traditionally is a Republican state and it's going Democrat. If the win for the Democrats expands the majority for that party in Congress, it also adds to the number of Trump-supported candidates who fared poorly in the midterm elections.
All right, there's been plenty happening. Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. Sean, you're speaking with Gareth Aird from Commonwealth Bank.
Yeah, all about rates, all about economic growth, all about house prices. Do not miss it.
Yeah, I just love the fact that Gareth is not afraid to make a prediction.
Yeah, that's right. He's such a lovely fella. You wouldn't say he's outspoken, but then when you go back and listen to what he said, you almost have to say he's outspoken.
Yeah, well, he's just very kind of forthright in what he believes and he's happy to kind of stick with it. I love that. It's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 8th of December, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget to check out that new episode of How Do They Afford That, which came out yesterday, all about basically how to have the holiday that you want without a pile of debt. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.